July 7th, 2012, Saturday. Dr. Albrecht, the head zoologist at Berlin Zoological Garden, crouched in the tall grass not far from the lionesses. The sun had just risen and the predators were lethargic. Still, most zoologists would not be in the pen with the animals. Dr. Albrecht, however, did not seem concerned about them. He held his stopwatch and kept his eyes on a fawn that now walked into view. The first lioness, spotting the fawn, perked up and went stiff. The other lionesses quickly took a cue from the first one and looked in the direction she looked. Now they were all looking at the back side of the fawn, seemingly oblivious of her potential fate. After a few tense moments, the lionesses started moving toward the fawn. She nervously started to trot from its predators. The hunters picked up the pace and the fawn bolted for the other side of the pen at top speed. The cats were now running at full speed in hopes of cornering the fawn at the far side of the pen. Once the pursued reached the other side of the pen, with hungry friends behind her, she jumped high into the air. Then, almost instantly, the fawn shape-shifted into a hawk and with a few flaps of feathered wings was well above the pen. "Perfect," said Dr. Albrecht. He then walked a few steps to the side of the pen and effortlessly jumped over 20 feet to clear the barrier at the side of the pen. The hawk flew up behind him and landed on his shoulder. "Thank you so much, honey. I got just the data I needed." The man and the bird walked a little farther to a utility shed near the lion's pen. Dr. Albrecht opened the door and the hawk jumped off his shoulder. He turned his back on the door and continued. "Joanna, would you like me to take you to breakfast?" "Just a second, I'm still getting my clothes on," Joanna said. After a brief pause, a beautiful blonde 12-year-old girl emerged from the shed, still straightening up her summer dress. "I would love breakfast, Dad." "Good, because I'm starving. Thank you again for helping out with this. They're onto me somehow. Scent, movement, I'm not sure." "It's no problem, Dad. I like helping. I like that nobody is here this early and we can do this," Joanna said as they both started walking. "You got your mother's message about dinner tonight?" Dr. Albrecht asked as he placed his arm around his daughter's shoulder as they walked. "Yes, I did. Grandmother is in town for one night only. Do we know what the occasion is?" "Be nice. Your grandmother is a very busy businesswoman, and she asked especially that your mother, you, and I be at dinner." They walked a little farther. Her father looked down at her and asked, "Are you happy with your life?" Immediately, he tried to make the question sound less serious. "I mean, there are a lot of things someone with your talents could do in this world. Are you happy with the education and opportunities that your mother and I have given you?" Joanna looked at her father and thought he must be having some kind of overprotective over your only child fit. "Dad, I am the daughter of 2 doctors who want nothing more from me than to see me educated better than they were. I'm very happy," Joanna said reassuringly. "Not just the education, other things. Do you ever feel your life could, or should be more? You mean being a healer like Mom and a shifter like you?" She watched him shrug, and an uncomfortable silence started growing. "Is Mom pregnant?" Joanna asked bluntly. "No," her father said as he smiled. "Not that she's told me. Never mind. Where would you like to go for breakfast?" The two continued walking toward the entrance of the zoo. At dinner, Joanna and her parents arrived at the restaurant after her grandmother had already been seated in a private room. Joanna ignored all the greetings that were going on between her parents and her grandmother and went straight to hugging her grandmother. Joanna was just over 5 feet tall now and only a few inches shorter than her grandmother. Joanna looked right into her eyes, which were the same cerulean blue as hers. Grandmother Declute was a medical doctor just like Joanna's mother. Everyone always said Joanna and her grandmother looked so much alike. She thought her grandmother was beautiful, so the comparison was welcome. "Shall we take our seats, dear?" Grandmother said. Joanna moaned on the inside when the conversation started off in first gear. They all started talking about how great it is to see you, how was your flight, you look good, how was work, what have you been doing in your free time, how are your grades, and on and on. The atmosphere became different when Grandmother became serious. "I came to visit for a specific reason. A new class is about to start up and I have something for Joanna," Grandmother said as she took an envelope from her purse and passed it to Joanna. The envelope was snatched by Joanna's mother. "She's only 12 years old," she snipped. "And you will do what? Keep all her mail from her until you're ready for her to read it?" her grandmother said. "Give Joanna the letter. her father said. Her mother looked at him half angry and half pleading for support. Do you think you can keep its contents secret? He asked. Mother reluctantly handed over the envelope. Joanna seemed afraid of the envelope for a second. Maybe it was horrible medical news. She opened the letter and read it twice before looking up. How can I be invited to Alpha? I thought that was for children of superheroes, Joanna asked. It's a mistake, honey. Alpha isn't for you, her mother said. She was invited because it is for her. Joanna is exactly the kind of person we want at Alpha, her grandmother said. We? Joanna questioned. Dr. DeClute smiled knowingly at her granddaughter. You got more than just my eyes, Joanna. She's not going and that's final. Joanna, get your coat, let's go, her mother ordered as she stood up. When it was time for you to choose, I let you make your own decision, grandmother said to mother. I thought that much of you. I know you think that much of Joanna as well. Joanna's mother sat back down and looked at Dr. DeClute. Mother, I remember your friends. People that I called Aunt this or Uncle that. I remember reading about how they died in the war. Grandmother grew somber. I'm sorry the war interrupted your childhood, but those heroes sacrificed everything to save the world from the coalition. Their deaths meant something and should not be used as fuel for your emotional outbursts. Joanna's mother stopped and tried to find a better reason for her not to be allowed to go. She then turned to her husband, placed her hand on his and said, She's only 12, and she shouldn't be away from us. Being a superhero can be dangerous. Besides, we already have her university picked out. I want her to stay home. I can assure you the education she would receive at Alpha Academy cannot be matched by any school in the world, grandmother said. Father looked at his daughter. He knew she now realized what he had been asking about earlier. You two have been expressing your opinions about the path Joanna's life should take, but neither of you have asked me. More importantly, no one has asked Joanna. If I go to this school, do I have to be a superhero? Joanna questioned. No, you can leave the Academy or the Heroes Union at any time. A superhero whose heart isn't in it is no good to anyone, her grandmother replied. Mom? Dad? Do you think I'm strong enough to do this? Of course you are, honey. Your mother and I believe you're strong enough to do anything, her father said, looking at her mother who was about to cry. Joanna's mother knew where this was going, but spoke the truth in spite of her own feelings. Joanna, I know you could do anything you put your heart into. Do you trust me to make the right decision on my own? Joanna asked. There was a long pause at the table when no one breathed. Her father looked at his wife, waiting for her to answer. Joanna had seen this before. If one of them was in doubt about what the other would say, they waited for the other to answer first. Using this tactic, they always presented a unified front, both parents always seeming to agree. She watched her mother wrestle with something inside, and then she finally spoke. I may live to regret this, but Joanna, you're smarter than most adults in this world, and you will always be the best at whatever you do. I want you to stay with me for me, not for you. You need to live with this decision, and I trust you to make the right one. Joanna turned to her grandmother. You said we. What did you mean? I am the Alpha Academy Dean and Head Administrator. One of our top coaches chose you for recruitment, grandmother said. Mother, will you support me in the decision I make? I'm sorry I reacted badly to the news. It's a shock. I will support you, her mother said firmly enough to sound believable. What is the schedule like? When will I be able to come home? First school day this year is August 6th. Your travel day would be July 29th. You need to attend a week of placement trials before classes start. Classes are taught for 9 weeks, followed by 2 weeks of vacation. That would mean you come home on October 6th for 2 weeks, another 2 weeks at Christmas, and another 2 weeks in the spring before a 10-week summer vacation, grandmother answered. I can quit any time and come home, right? Any time, and I'll bring you home myself, she assured her. Mom, how about I go for the first 9 weeks? I'll have some kind of idea if this is something I want to do, and if I don't, I can come home. Joanna's mother firmed up a brave face and said, My daughter is going on the first big adventure of her life. She then turned to Dr. DeClute. But let's be realistic. I've never heard of anyone quitting Alpha once they go.